What's up, people? We're back. It's another miserable week. You know, Chris, I actually wanted to talk to you about that. It would have been one thing, right, if this quarantine set in, but at the very least, the weather was nice, you know, it being spring and all. But call me crazy, but it has literally just been absolutely miserable out. Almost every single day since this thing started, like gray, cloudy. It's almost like the weather is secretly teaming up with this virus in order to basically say, hey, stay the fuck inside, people. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I like the way you painted that picture, but I couldn't disagree more. I think we've only had like 3 or 4 bad days. If you remember last week, dude, there was like 60, 70 degree days. I was out on 3-4 hour walks with my dog, just getting this beautiful sun. I was sweating.
You know what?
It was so
you know
hot.
what? You know what?
I'm sorry.
Right.
I gotta be real.
No, you're right. 'Cause I'm just an idiot because I just realized the reason why I never actually get it is because I'm inside working all day,
and that's what
so
I
don't
gonna
actually
say.
get to be outside in the sun. And then I don't know. Like my memories become very, very strange in my old age.
Can I tell you why I did that? Like, was so brutally honest.
Well, sure.
Because you said last week something that really stuck with me on our social network podcast. You were like, because, hey, you know, it's podcasting, and podcasting is for being honest. And I was like,
true.
damn,
Well,
you know,
I mean, I wish
hate
that,
to
like,
kill your thunder
well,
here, but I got it, Dom.
Right, because I'm always the guy that does that to you, so it figures that you should be the one to do that to me for once.
Are we in a war?
Yeah,
like
I mean, I
battle?
wish human beings could be honest with each other, but the problem is if human beings are ever actually honest with each other, that's what results in, like, war and death and famine and all that good shit, because we can't actually interact with each other, which is why we have to lie to each other. But besides that lovely little tangent, I am, of course, the movie nerd. That's the TV nerd. We're the Talkin TV podcast. We're back. Chris, you had quite an eventful weekend this past weekend.
Oh, yeah, you can say that. I'm really tired.
Yeah,
to be honest
you're
with you.
probably wiped out.
It was
man, a lot of your favorite movie franchise watching, if I had to say.
Yeah, well, you know, I definitely had a bit of a change of heart so basically, guys, if you don't know, you can go and check out on our channel later this week. We'll be throwing up the videos as sort of like in case you missed it. But right now on Movie Files channel, our good friend Elliot, he had me on to represent our show. Unfortunately, Dom couldn't make it. He was missed. We watched two Marvel anniversary films. We watched the 2-year anniversary of Infinity War on Saturday, and then the exact day we watched the 1-year anniversary of Endgame, and a bunch of other awesome content creators, Flix Talk, Brando Critic, Q Reviews, to name a few. And you'll see them all on our podcast here soon. It was definitely really fun, Dom. It was a lot of work because I had to really prepare for this thing. There was a lot that I hadn't seen, and there was a lot that I forgot. But
because you watched, like, over the course, can we just talk about the fact that, like, over the course of, like, 3 days, you watched how many Marvel movies?
I watched 10.5 Marvel movies.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I finished
Dude,
up.
I couldn't even do that in my wildest dreams. Like, that is commitment right there. Props to you, good sir. And keeping in mind, this is directly from the mouth of the person who has stated multiple times that he can't stand the Marvel movie. So again, like, big round of applause there.
Thank you.
Absolutely deserve it.
It was tough. It was really tough.
Way to troop it out.
But like the thing is, so I still have my feelings about Marvel films, and watching more and getting more of an in-depth knowledge on the MCU. I feel a little more justified in my thoughts and in my feelings, but I gotta say there are a few things that I was just sort of being that bitter little film snob who has a podcast about film and who has to just appreciate true cinema. And so there are some things that, like, watching them in this bubble and seeing sort of how Phase 1 Ultron paid homage to all the movies that came before it in Phase 1 with the callbacks and just like the minor details coming through, and like for the first time ever that cheeseburger scene at the end of Endgame between Filoni, right?
Happy John Favreau.
Yeah, Favreau.
I like how
you're
getting your Star Wars guys mixed up now.
I am.
And Tony Stark's daughter, yeah, and how that's a callback to the first Iron Man. Like you're understanding now why the Marvel Cinematic Universe is special to so many people, and like
yes.
I said, it's growth, man. It's growth. I give you a lot of credit for that.
Yeah,
but,
dude. So it's I can see how it's special to a lot of people. It's still not that special to me. What's more special is like the memories I made this weekend, hanging out with these people, and I think what's going to be super special is bringing all these guys on and going on their channels in the future. That's what I'm looking forward to the most from this. Is just the collaboration and just the hangs. Because Dom, I can't wait for you to meet these guys, man. This is a good panel of people. You're going to get along.
I met one of them, which is good. But yeah, no, I watched a little bit of the videos. It looks fun. Again, I unfortunately was unable to make it. I had other stuff going, but that's okay. I was trying to be productive in my own time, or as productive as I can.
Did you put up a review
during
today?
These quarantine
That's awesome.
times. I did. I plan on putting up many, many more reviews. I got all my reviews done for the first third of this year. I always get my thirds and quarters mixed up. I have to think of like, okay, it's every 3 months is a quarter, every 4 months is a third. Okay, good. But yeah, no, I got a decent amount of reviews coming out in the pipeline. They're gonna be super quick, like 2 to 3 minutes each. I'll put them on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram channel. You guys know it at this point. It's in the name right there.
And we'll tell them at the end of the episode too.
But we're not here to talk about any of that stuff, Chris. We're here to talk about, because I'm actually really happy because, Chris, I didn't think that we were going to see this again before this quarantine ended. We're actually here to talk about a new movie.
Something relevant.
They're actually talking about that. Which, speaking of which, if I could just do another quick side tangent, we also unfortunately found out. So today is Monday, the 27th. This episode will be up on Wednesday, the 29th. And we just found out, unfortunately, the next sign that the original theater-going experience is dying, which is that Judd Apatow's next film, The King of Staten Island, starring Pete Davidson, will unfortunately be foregoing the theatrical release and will be released direct to streaming. I forgot the date. I think it's going to be sometime in the summer. And like, I don't know, like, did you just want to touch on that? Because it actually does tie in a little bit with the film that we are talking about today, but obviously much different circumstances.
Yeah, I did want to touch on it, and I know you liked the post on our podcast page on Instagram. Go follow that. Basically, I had to post that when you sent that to me, you know, and of course always give credit to your sources.
I put it on the story.
But yeah, I mean, so for me, right, someone who's more on the music side of this thing, you guys know I'm never shy about that. Although I do love film and I have a passion for this realm, but like that shook me, you know. So Dom, like, being someone who's got his finger on the pulse, man, like, what does this mean for just like everything as a whole?
It's interesting to see. Like I said, I give Apatow the foresight to be like, okay, I don't want to have to wait potentially a year or more just so that my film can get released on the big screen and probably get killed by like the numerous other big budget blockbuster content. But I actually think this speaks, if anything, to a larger discussion that was kind of taking place before the corona really set in, and because the corona has had a big impact on this just overall, with the idea of movies that go to the theater versus movies that are going direct to streaming. And it seems now more than ever that unless it's the big epic popcorn popcorn munching like theatrical experiences, not like a Marvel film. Well, again, that's putting it in a box. But again, the superhero movies, again, popcorn, it's very easy to pin it on those. But like your superhero movies, your big musicals, your Oscars, it literally is becoming. I see what you mean. I'm sorry. And I can't believe I'm saying this, like the 50s, where because in the 50s, television came in and completely television came in, and so the theaters had to kind of rework their strategy. So the only movies that came out and did really well in theaters, because again, movies are a business first and foremost. Thank you, the schmoes, for giving me that little tad bit. The only movies that you saw in theaters were these big, giant spectacle epics or these big, sprawling musicals. And that's kind of the same thing, because if we're just talking specifically about comedy movies, comedies just in the last year alone, you want to talk about the comedies and how they did at the box office, it was almost laughable how poorly they did at the box office. Like 2018, the signs were already there, and they were kind of there before in 2017, but like this past year, 2019, was really the year where it's just like comedy after comedy just came and went from theaters. And so it does make me happy because this film, A, is going to get released. B, it's going to be seen by a very wide audience because it's going direct to VOD. But it also makes me a little bit sad because at the same time, it's like not, to me, the beauty of, again, just movie making in general and the theater going experience is the variety. And just this, to me, is contributing. Again, I don't want to dog on superhero movies, but it is contributing to a problem that I was having last year, which is where I was only started to see one kind of a movie go to the theaters, which is where if it wasn't a superhero movie or a musical or an Oscar grabber, it didn't get released in theaters. And that really makes me sad because like I like going to the movies for variety, not just for the same type of movie over and over again.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, you know, variety and competition in any sort of space is always good because that's when you have people competing to create the best product. And so once you get rid of that, I mean, you really get pigeonholed. And you know, a great example of like, you know, variety being needed is like there are many people like you, I'm sure, who drive, like you drive down to the Jacob Burns, right? That's like an hour.
Yeah.
You drive an hour
I drive
south
an hour
to go
out
get
of my
variety.
way to, yeah.
So
yeah, I do.
So you think this is a good thing or a bad thing then that this is going straight to VOD?
It's always a twofold double sword issue, because it's good in the sense that more people are seeing it, which is always key, obviously, in order to make any product work. But it's bad in the sense of, okay, it's not going to get kind of the treatment that, say, a comedy like any of the comedies that we loved watching and going to the theaters to watch, you know? Like, I've talked, and again, it was part of the whole Scorsese debacle that happened last year, which is where Scorsese wasn't talking about that he doesn't like superhero movies. Scorsese was talking about the fact that the theater-going experience is an essential component to the movie-going experience, and the reason why movies are so memorable and so beloved, and why we make podcast after podcast talking about them, is because specifically the theater-going experience creates it, and it doesn't make it just like another disposable commodity. It makes it an experience, you know? And again, as much as convenient as the streaming services have made it, there definitely is something that takes away from the fact that you can't get that type of experience, that same type of experience at home. Even if you've got the best setup in the world, there was just nothing quite like the theatrical going experience. And so, but again, a big part of that is variety. And so if I'm going to the theater and I know exactly what I'm going to get, that's already taken away from the theater-going experience. You know, that's a problem that I've had to face for like the last 5 years now, where because I go to the theater like every single weekend, you know, just by sheer fact of that alone, everything is going to start to feel predictable to me. But you add this on top of that, that's where my despair comes from, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think you said it really well, man. It's one of those things that, like, I mean, so we got to jump into the topic soon here, but I got to ask one more question on this tangent, and I do think it's relevant, or else I wouldn't sort of keep us away from the big shebang. But so with that being said, I mean, this is the first of many, right? Like I feel like we're just scratching the surface on this whole.
Oh no, I agree.
Adjusting
this is the first
medium of art getting distributed now, right? Like what you
this
like, you know?
This is the first major release that we've heard of, but I am predicting that at least for the rest of the year, every movie that is not like a giant big budget release that will, if it's not a giant release that will lose money if it goes direct to the streaming services, every small movie that we look forward to, which usually are the movies that end up making like our top 10 lists and our favorites at the end of the year, I'm predicting that by the end of the year, every single one of those is either going to go direct to VOD or just get leaked either way by the end of the year. I am predicting that right now. So like every single movie that got big out of Sundance, every comedy per se, you know, the Lovebirds, that Kumail Nanjiani Issa Rae movie, that went like right to Netflix immediately, which I'm like, yeah, for a movie like that deserved to be on Netflix, you know, because I'm like, I was never going to watch that to begin with, but you know what I'm saying, though. Yeah.
Same with that My Spy movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're making my point for me. But it's actually funny, like, if I can kind of roll it now into the movie that we're talking about, because it's kind of both a similar and indifferent problem. So if I can go into a little bit of a history with both my relationship with HBO and my relationship with the director of this movie. So this movie that we're talking about today is called Bad Education. It's directed by Corey Finley, who, Chris, I believe you're unfamiliar with him, but this guy directed my favorite directorial day outing. It's funny, me and my other friend, we had this running joke throughout the year of 2018. The 2018 was just like the year of directorial debuts, because it felt like for every other big movie that came out, there was a directorial debut.
Yeah, I am unfamiliar with him, so please enlighten me.
Like Thoroughbreds, Hereditary, Blindspotting, mid-90s, like the list went on and on and on. Like 8th Grade, all of those were directorial debuts.
One of those happenstance years, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It just seemed to keep going on and on and on. But Finley, to me, Corey Finley had easily my favorite outing with this movie called Thoroughbreds, which was this black comedy about these two girls who were in prep school, and they both schemed to team up and murder the one girl's stepdad just because, you know? It kind of had one of those like Stepford Wives, like almost like that kind of Heathers dark comedy feel to it, but for like a modern day audience. It was brilliantly written, brilliantly acted. Olivia Cooke and Anya Taylor-Joy. Good God, I want another movie starring those two just because of how good they were in this movie. But so, because he had such a strong outing, and because that movie was my favorite movie of that year for a lot of months, I was really looking forward to his next movie, especially when I found out that Hugh Jackman was going to be starring in his next movie. I was like, holy fuck, give me that movie like now. I don't even care what it's about. And then at Toronto International Film Festival 2019, the movie got picked up by HBO. And at the time, that made me super depressed, because I'm like, okay, that's good and all, because it means it'll be seen by a lot of people, but A, I have a bad tendency to just not watch HBO movies. I don't know why. Just most, like, it's nothing against them. They're nothing against their quality, but just most of them just go over my head usually, and I just forget to watch them. And so I didn't want that to happen with this movie, but also because, oh, fuck, I had such a great time going back to the theater-going experience, watching Thoroughbreds in the theater. And I'm not going to be able to do that with this next movie.
It's a big part of it.
Needless to say, little did I know that the coronavirus was right around the corner. And so next thing you know, not only did I end up looking forward to this movie even more, but it ended up being like, to me, like the equivalent of like getting a new movie if I had gone to the theater. You know, and I actually, in a way, kind of ended up being better than going to the theater when I watched this movie, because this movie, holy shit, did it have an impact on me. So
coming from you, wow.
Yeah, right. Oh, man.
This was better almost better than going to the theaters, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we'll put it this way. Like, very rarely to me can I say that I have a theatrical going experience in my house where I am just completely sucked into a movie and I am unable to pause it. Even if it's, like, the greatest movie ever, I usually, like, I pause. Again, it's just the idea of, if I have to pee during a movie, I know that I am deliberately giving up a minute of that movie that I am going to miss, and that I will have to wait until it comes out to see it again.
Yeah.
If I'm watching it at home, it doesn't matter how good it is. I can always pause it in order to go pee. You know, like if my phone goes off, whatever. It's just those little things that constantly remind me, oh, I'm not in the theater. But this was honestly the first time that I think I've seen that with a new movie where that I didn't have that distraction. So, Chris, if we could just dive in. The basic plot of the movie: Hugh Jackman is a school superintendent and former teacher who finds himself embroiled in a very heavy corruption scandal. It's about it that happened in the early 2000s in a school system. I believe what is it? Roseland High School system.
Something
I forgot
like
the
that.
name
It's
of
a
it.
fucking Long Island.
In Long Island. It's got a really good. It's got a really freaking good cast. Allison Janney's in this movie. Romano's in this movie. A bunch of other people. A lot of lesser known character actors. Jimmy Tatro, Alex Wolff. A lot of people in this movie. So, Chris, before we actually jump in, what were your overall thoughts on Bad Education? You know, because I know I told you my relationship with HBO movies, but you did not have the type of relationship with this director that I did going in. So just overall, what were your thoughts going in, and what were some brief thoughts that you had after you finished watching it?
Well, Dom, I appreciate you giving me the proverbial talking stick, but like I am curious, and if you don't mind, before we get to me, I kind of want to ask, like, so you had high expectations then for this film, considering
the only reason why I throw it to you is because I just talked a lot.
Yeah, no. So yes or no, like you were very much so looking forward to like one of your favorite directorial debut second films.
Yeah, regardless of like I said before, I even again all the circumstances aside, I did very much want to know how this movie was gonna do, like compared to Thoroughbreds, because like I said, it's very, very tricky, you know, when you get a directorial debut, a first-time director that has such an impressive outing. You know, like I'm attributing it I'm talking to like the level of like an Alex Garland with Ex Machina, or like a Jordan Peele with Get Out. You know, where you just this first-time director. Again, regardless of whether you know them as a personality or not, Jordan Peele is the one exception, but like for the most part, you don't know them and you don't even know who they are, and they just come in and they just blow you away. And you're like, holy fuck, this is this first film? Like, this guy directs this shit like it's a pro, you know? And, like he's been doing this for 30, 40 years, you know? And so it's always tricky when you have their follow-up effort, because then it's a very recent phenomenon, but it's something that I've been noticing, because what happens afterwards is then, oh, all eyes are on you. And you find that even if the movie is good as possibly can be, you're like, oh, but you know, the immediate thought process is going to be to say, oh, but it wasn't as good as your first outing. You know, like the immediate thing that comes to mind to me is Jordan Peele's Us that came out last year. You know, good movie.
Yeah,
I really liked it, but compared to Get Out, like. Yep. Not even a question. Like, those two aren't even comparable. Same thing with Alex Garland. I really, really liked Annihilation, which was his follow-up that he did 3 years after Ex Machina in 2019. That movie was unbelievable. That movie was still, ironically enough, right behind Thoroughbreds, my number 5. But compared to Ex Machina, it's like, it's not even a question as to what's better to me, you know? And so that's kind of like my thought. That was kind of my thought process going into this movie.
Okay, I felt like I needed that. So basically, how did I feel about Bad Education? Well, I can tell you I was pretty excited for this film because, like you said, so well put in the beginning, you know, this is kind of like the feeling of getting a movie in theaters again, you know, like this was the one VOD movie that was a little bit higher up than the rest as far as anticipation goes. And this was the one shining light amidst quarantine, amidst not leaving my house in almost 6 weeks now, and amidst just the chaos of cabin fever. And that's why I could not be any more disappointed with what I got. I mean, such an all-star cast, and I'm not even the biggest, fan of all these actors. I haven't seen everything they've done, but everything they've done has put them at such a level where it's like, cool. So they were on that list of they can do no wrong. But, my problem doesn't really come from the acting too much in this film, although I felt that what we got was not what I expected, especially from, the hype that you and Elliot and a few other people have been giving me this around this movie the past few weeks. And I don't know, man, it fell flat to me. It wasn't as compelling as everyone else seems to be saying. I mean, the drama and the narrative and the true life event is very interesting. I mean, it's the biggest embezzlement public school district scandal in United States history. So you think, hey, there's something there. And I'm not doubting that there isn't something there for a lot of people, but for me, it just really was a drag. If I gotta put it very lightly.
So was it a situation where the movie felt just like slow to you? Was it not engaging? Like, talk to me here. What was your thought like when this movie opens and kind of how the first act goes along with how it's like kind of spinning this web? Because to me, like the brilliant thing, if I could again just gush about this movie for a little bit, the brilliant thing to me is that Corey Finley kind of tricks you into thinking how he does it is he utilizes his first act to trick you into thinking you're getting one type of a movie, and then about halfway through, he like pulls the switcheroo. Like he did this, I thought, very, very well with Thoroughbreds. Where with Thoroughbreds, he's kind of setting up the dynamic between these two girls, where the one is a very obvious like sociopath, like there was something wrong with this girl, and the other one is kind of this more typical goody two shoes, but she's still trying to like, you can tell that she's like still got like a little bit of development going her way, and she still needs to kind of like find her place and who she is, and like throughout it, as like the journey goes on, and like the one kind of learns from the other, it's kind of one of those like the student becomes the master almost, like one of those relationships. And with this movie, it was a situation where the first act to me was almost seducing in a way. Like you're seduced into this like lap of luxury, like everything seems to be going right. You got this one superintendent who seems to like really care about the kids, and he wants to put like everything forward. He wants to put his best foot forward, he's always got that very charming smile, it's Hugh Jackman. You love Hugh Jackman, who doesn't? Right. And not to mention the fact that like, I feel like the biggest thing for me, but also, again, which is the key inciting incident, is the fact of this one kid is waiting in his office, She's just writing a newspaper article, doesn't seem to have that much interest in it, She says, I just need this one line. It's like a puff piece, whatever. And he literally tells her, it's like, it's only a puff piece if you make it a puff piece, Like, it's just kind of like that. It draws you in because it's like it has all those like giddy idealistic feelings that like you would want to see, especially, since most of us are post high school now and we kind of understand the way the world works. So we understand how, the cynical nature of everything and how what we have been led to believe is just, kind of like, oh, these people really are doing their best for us. It's really just a matter of, no, at the end of the day, these people still have jobs to do and they still have lives to get back to outside of this. And they really don't care as much as they say they do, But the movie kind of tricks you into thinking that for a moment until it pulls back the switch and slowly reveals just how deep this thing goes. And I thought this movie did that brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess here's where I have not a reason to disagree with you, but I think we're just looking at it a little differently. And so here's how I saw this film, right? I never fault the actors during this film. I think that they did a good job with what they were given, but I think what they were given was skimp at best. It just never felt beefy. Nothing about it was compelling. Like, yeah, so obviously we knew this guy was too perfect, but that just the setup was just like, okay, well, he's clearly too perfect. This doesn't interest me. We've seen this before. Something's going to happen with him. He's going to be, he obviously is at the core of it being he's like the main character and, he's just too perfect. Something's going to go wrong for this guy or else it wouldn't be a drama. And all of like the supporting cast and they all just felt like they so obviously walked into it. And I know this happened in real life. So, hey, maybe these are just idiot people. And that's why I don't want to fault the actors because they're just portraying people that actually existed. But I thought maybe like the nuances of the film, like seeing her host that party and how she was like, just throw it on the card, just throw it on the card. It all felt very just like they were saying the lines to say them and get the paycheck. Like it didn't, I don't know, it just didn't feel alive. This film had no life to me.
They just didn't make an impact.
Yeah,
well, again,
it felt flat,
it
felt dead. It didn't feel like it had a soul, and it's a shame because, like I said, the subject matter was very compelling on paper, especially coming off my Marvel binge. I was dying for something rooted in reality and gravity. And so help me figure this out, Dom. Like, what is your interpretation of what I just said?
Well, again, like from what I've liked about Finley's now 2-movie track record is that it's that he seems to be able to have nailed a thing that troubles a lot of first-time directors, which is that he manages to have these very, very compelling characters, but he knows when to pull back and not like reveal too much. You know, like I found that like it with a lot of first-time directors, and honestly with like a lot of just films in general that have come out, is that we talked a lot about kind of straddling between plot and character, and how a lot of films usually can't seem to figure out, you know, it's like either all story and character just gets left behind, or all character and the story just kind of lags and meanders and is boring. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to me, this movie, and the thing that I've liked about both of Finley's movies so far, is that they managed to make is that he manages to nail the line between that perfect. Like I said, like his style so far after seeing these two movies to me is like a mix between Aaron Sorkin and the Coen brothers, where he's got that kind of, that like, I like the way that he phrases his dialogue. His dialogue is almost very play-like, you know? It's got like that playful banter with it, but also it's got a lot of hidden meaning and like a lot of context to it, while at the same time like playing with a lot of like very dark and like very unique subject matters, you know? Like, for example, like the whole thing, and why I think just Jackman's character was brilliant in and of itself, is that, again, it's not a showy performance because it's not supposed to be, you know? Like, I guess the term, like, I guess why I'm a little bit confused by your coining of the term, like, these beefy parts, you know, is because, like, they're not supposed to be these beefy parts. The film is kind of this, like, almost pseudo-comedy, but I guess, if anything, that's probably the one thing where I feel like this doesn't work, is that this film straddles the line between drama and dark comedy, and it doesn't necessarily pick a tone, but I don't think that it's the type of movie that has to, you know?
Oh, that's
because
where I disagree,
I feel like the subject matter speaks for itself. I feel like, because to me, like, it's compelling, you know? And to me, like, there's never a point where this movie feels, like, so tonally, like, out of place, you know? Which is something that I've seen with, like, a lot of other first-time filmmakers. They have this one idea for a tone that's really good, and then they just go in a drastically different one. You know, it's almost like a first draft where they're like, okay, this is really, really cool and all, and then that's just it, you know, and then they don't go back and think, oh, well, would this work, you know, within context, you know? But Finley really does seem to have, like, that spread, you know, like, where every single decision that these characters made in this movie just worked within the context of the world, you know? Because the revelation around Jackman's character feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's one of those things where if you're paying attention specifically to how he like characterizes his actions, like how he acts, you know, like it's one of those decisions that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, you know, when I watch a movie, and I know we're going to be podcasting about it, it's phones off, it's full focus, and I just never was sucked in. And I think the problem with this film is that, like, the tone, if there was one, wasn't compelling, but I'm going to say that it had no clear direction. I definitely got none of that dark comedy that you were talking about. None of this was comedic. If anything, it was just not played up enough. I mean, these people are all looking at years and years of jail, and in one little boardroom conversation, they're all just like, you know what? Frank's here. He's going to make it better. Like, he just somehow manages to convince them. And I don't think that is good character development, showing how much of a sociopath it is. I just think that's weak writing in your supporting cast.
That's where I'm going to disagree with you, because I don't think that was the point of that scene. The point of that scene to me was not to kind of tell us something about his character. The point of that scene was to kind of just show, okay, this is how these people would react in this type of a situation, you know, not forget that this is based on a true story. That's just like, okay, this, like, if you put these characters in a situation, you know, it's like just thinking about it logistically, playing through all the steps. It's like, okay, yeah, we either rat this woman out, you know, and we lose all this money and we lose our entire reputation, or, you know, we just fire her, you know, we basically pay her off, for lack of a better word, and we just go about our business, you know? Obviously, the further revelation would eventually be revealed, but yeah, like, to me, that scene just made perfect sense within context. So I'm like, okay, that's what these people would do, you know? If you're thinking about, like, just the way that adults think with, like, kind of that image consciousness,
and
you know?
I did that, and I couldn't disagree any more, because there was, for a second there, they almost turned, and then they all just, I mean, no, you don't react that way. You call the cops right away. You realize you have families. You realize that you have, you know, mortgages. You have people that depend on you, and you really need to be convinced in that moment. And if that is the type of convincing that happened in real life, well, it's no wonder that they all went down, you know, because these people are just idiots from the start. And no, hold on, let me finish, because the thing about it is, with this film, it's like, this is this grandiose story that happened in real life. and they did a great job with like, you know, shooting it on location. It looked like on Long Island. They talked like Long Islanders. I'll give them that. I've been to Long Island many times. It looked like a public school. I grew up in the New York public school system. It looked like everything I've seen, like the setting, the way that they get you in there right away, and then they just start speaking, and it just kind of undoes everything that we had just sort of gotten not thrust into, but we were getting used to, getting acquainted to. And it's just like, I don't know, man. It's one of those things where like, I don't think Jackman was that great in this performance, but again, I don't think it's his fault. I just think, like I said, this movie never felt like it had a clear direction, and so I'm curious to go back and watch this director's first film and see if I feel the same way. But it felt like he had all the tools in the sandbox to make something really, really special, and instead, what we got was, you know, a sandcastle you could have made with like a Party City shovel and a little orange bucket, because it just didn't work, in my opinion, on most levels.
I guess my thought then after that is kind of like, what is kind of a way that you would think like this movie could have worked, you know? Because what you're saying is that like the overall just like this kind of movie couldn't pick a direction, like, and it could have picked us. So, like, what are like some things that you could immediately think of that could make this movie better? You know, if anything like that.
Yeah, more.
And I know you don't like to fool around and like pick with like other directors, like, you know, their art and everything. But like, just picture for a moment. You know, you're the guy, you're in the seat, you're making the calls. Like, what is it you would do differently here?
No, I don't normally like to do this, and that's because, like, you know, being a creative and artist myself, I would, you know, I understand this stuff takes work, and there clearly was a lot of work put into this film. But since you asked the question, and I do think it is important to go there, I think we need way more detail. I think we need way more time with all these characters. I think that there was a lot of shots that lingered, a lot of scenes that weren't needed. There were some, montage scenes where I thought we should have seen that dynamic. Like, we should have seen the little kid journalist going down to those janitors, giving them the donuts and sort of getting more of her character. We should have seen her poking and prodding around a little more, as opposed to just her only real dialogue moments of pecking for information were with the two people who obviously were trying to hide it against them. Like, I just couldn't feel for I couldn't feel for her journey, her trying to do good, her trying to bring a story to life, because all I really got to know was these two horrible people, Pam and Frank, and didn't really feel like I got to know them that well. I actually did have this one thought, and I hate having these kind of thoughts, but like, I thought this could have been a really, really good HBO limited series, because I just think there was too much useless character information and not enough of the actual real world facts built in and nuanced into, like, performing and making this theatrical, because that's the point, right? It's not a documentary. It's like, right. Would you call this a biopic? What would you call this?
That's tricky. Like, because it's one thing, obviously, because a biopic is always kind of categorized around a real life person.
Exactly.
But this is more so just about an event. So this is tricky. Like, you wouldn't call
it's
Chernobyl
rooted
a
in
biopic,
historical accuracy.
Rooted in historical facts,
yeah. And so, like, I just wanted a little more facts and a little more entertainment. And again, I just feel like we could have had that if the direction was a little more figured out, a little stronger, So I feel like I'm making sense, but maybe you just disagree.
So no. I actually absolutely understand what you're saying for, because you're believe it or not, you're actually not the only person that said that, because again, like, the whole thing about this movie is that and again, why I think it works primarily is because it's a very smooth edit, like it's very, very tight and lean. Like, I feel like this is a movie where there's not a single bit of extra fat that's on it, but you are not the only person that I've heard that said that, like, a longer edit could have benefited this, because, like, imagine if they had, like, kind of gone even more so into kind of the thought process. Because the thing, and I will actually admit this, like, this is actually something that I wish we could have gotten more of, is that we got, I think, like, a decent bit about Allison Janney, and I think they did a really good job of kind of giving us the motivation as to why she stole without actually telling us. But the thing is that with Jackman's character, and kind of when it's revealed that he also stole and embezzled this much money, The kind of, like, the idea behind it is that he's gay, but and that's kind of, like, given as, like, the motivation that, like, he's constantly looking for the escape, that he's being trapped in. So you're right. I will give you that. Like, if anything, like, I feel like a longer edit kind of could have given us more about their characters individually and kind of made it easier to understand. But to me, like, at least for my money and what I got, I understood perfectly exactly like where they were going, like with kind of trying to get us to understand with these characters, understanding why they did what they did, you know? And as for the rest of the characters being idiots, yeah, that's the point. Like, most of the people that are in these scenarios are idiots, like, I guess if you're looking at it from like the outside point, because the whole thing is that they're usually not aware of these things until it's too late, you know?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's like, it's not that I needed more from the characters. I just needed to see more useful interactions and more useful scenes. Like, I feel like I saw way too much of this Los Angeles person. I mean, I get it. He was buying first class flights. Sure, I feel like that whole storyline just took away from us getting more meat and potatoes, us getting more in the thick of the drama. Like, I never felt sucked in. So at the end, when it was all over and he went to jail and he has that sort of like fever dream almost of him in the jail cell, like, you know, getting to first place, what he wanted the most, I was just happy it was over. You know, I didn't care. I was like, okay, cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, a little callback to the first scene. Okay, cool. He did it in his dreams. And so I guess, you know, he's so much of a sociopath that even at his lowest, he has to imagine he's at his highest. But like, I could care less about that. And one of the things that I think is criminal is how I was dying to see Ray Romano in more of these intense roles, like we saw him in the Tarantino, in the Irishman. Sorry, in the Irishman, and I loved him in that movie. And I feel like his dramatic acting is so good, especially where he's at this point in his life.
He's a really good little character actor.
He is, and he was so criminally underused and underwritten, and I don't want to say underperformed, but I mean, I don't remember him that much, and I just watched the film 2 hours ago.
He was part of the ensemble in this movie. Like, you take him, and again, that's fine. Like, that's what Ray Romano does. Like, Ray Romano is like that really good character actor. You know,
sure.
Like, I've seen him like 3-4 times now, like with The Big Sick, and then with The Irishman, and then he was also in that HBO show Vinyl. You know, like, I've seen him in all of these little bit parts, and again, like, he's good. He's really, really good for what the parts call for. But like, they never, to me, like, add anything special. Like, to me, like, the only reason why you know him is because he is Ray Romano and he is like a household name, you know? Like, if you didn't know that was Ray Romano, to me, you would kind of just know him like as that guy, you know? Like, to me, like that.
So
like,
we really disagree a lot in regards to this ballpark, because I thought he brought a lot that was special to The Irishman.
No, I'm not saying that like he didn't bring anything special, but what I'm saying is that it's kind of the same situation that like you see with all these comedic stars, which is where you know them because of their personality. But to me, like, I haven't seen anything from him yet that really establishes, okay, he can give like something of like a really different kind of a performance. Like, to me, still the most compelling dramatic performance that he's given was in The Big Sick, you know, when he was playing just like this dad of you know, where his daughter, who is an adult pretty much, is now in a coma, and there's nothing that he could do to help her, and just kind of that feeling of helplessness, and then kind of like how he forms this bond with this guy who only had like one date with her, you know, like that to me was the most compelling thing, you know, and everything, like in both this and then with The Irishman, it was like, oh, hey, he's just Ray Romano, and he's getting some really good lines, but you know, like those are both parts to me that like anybody could have played. You know?
And I felt that way about pretty much everyone casted in this film, and that's why I say it's criminal, because I know Hugh Jackman can do so much better, and I've seen him do so much better, and I just can't. So what I can't figure out is if it's the writing, if it's the direction, or if it's the actors, because there wasn't much in the way of cinematography. It was pretty basic. It's what you needed. The edit was what you needed. The set design was what you needed. The score was what you needed. They weren't amazing.
So you weren't a fan of the score?
It was fine.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that's the same guy who did the score for Get Out and Us?
It would, because, you know, hey,
it is. It's Michael Abels.
Inspiration
it's the same guy.
is a tricky drug, and sometimes it gets you where you want. And I guess in this case, it was fine. Like, it wasn't terrible.
It's funny because for me, most of the movie, the score I thought was very. I thought it was like classical, like opera. Like, I thought he was like kind of pulling the favorite, where he was like pulling like other older, like non-copyrighted, like classical pieces. I didn't realize that was an original score, and so I'm like, to me, it's like, oh wow, that's actually kind of awesome, because like that score to me was so compelling, like kind of like with this almost like dark, like Shakespearean-esque fall. Like, it's a tad bit over dramatic, but for me, I thought it worked.
Yeah, I would never use overdramatic to describe any facet of this film. So, Dom, with that being said, I think we've had enough of why I dislike the film. But to me, I'm going to guess right now that it's batting near perfect in your eyes. So what about it?
Near
what
perfect.
about it sucked you in? And like, what about it were like the true things where you were like, damn, I'm into this movie?
Well, recency bias is a beautiful thing, because again, like Thoroughbreds is still fairly fresh on my mind, where I had enough of like, oh wow, this guy really made an impact on me. And I guess the whole thing with me watching this movie is that, okay, it's really good to see that this guy has a follow-up that didn't disappoint me. And I guess if anything, it comes down to the fact that this is based on a true story that didn't irritate me, because it's like, okay, this doesn't feel like something that's like just using the based on a true story as like a ploy to use like different like bullshit techniques that like film tropes that I can't stand, that I've seen a million times before. Like I
can agree.
I really
hate
to keep bringing this up, but Bohemian Rhapsody really did ruin the idea of a biopic for me.
I can also
it's
agree with
the
that.
fact that so many people bought into that blatantly fabricated horseshit movie, like, still pisses me off to no end. And if anything, it sucks because like there were a few movies that came out directly after that almost directly mimicked it. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. This is the route that Hollywood goes. Hollywood no longer actually gives a shit about like actually buying into the thing that made biopics good to begin with. And this movie, again, while not a direct biopic, more of like a retelling of like a real set of events, to me, it was kind of getting back to the roots of what make these types of movies good to begin with, which is having, based off of an event that was just absurd enough to get people invested in it, you know, while at the same time having just enough of that dramatic flair in order to make it a compelling narrative, and then everything else to me just fit in perfectly, you know, like, to me, again, you're right in the sense that, like, no other part in this movie is, like, that beefy, because to me, the focuses of this movie are Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney. Everybody else is secondary. Those two are the prime focuses. And if we're just focusing on those two and how they portray their characters, again, it's one of the few instances where I get everything that I need to know about these characters without them having to tell me a single thing. You know, like all the dialogue, all the interactions that came between these guys, it felt very, very naturalistic in an absurd way. You know, I've said this a lot of times before, is that in movies, to me, absurdity can sometimes lead to the most naturalistic scenarios. And this was yet another example that helped to back that up. And in order to go kind of a little bit further into that, I also think that Jackman's whole thing, and the reason why I think this to me is probably his best performance since Logan and Prisoners, is that he's playing so against type, in the sense that even though, again, you're watching Hugh Jackman, this gorgeous 6 foot whatever male that you've seen play Wolverine for the last 20 years, play kind of this like really cautious, very quiet guy. You know, again, he's like the face of the school, but you can tell that he's a very subdued guy who's got a lot kind of brewing under the surface. You know, it's almost kind of like a character that you like prescribe to like a season 1 Walter White, you know, where this guy who has been kicked around nonstop for his entire life to the point where he's ready to explode, you know? But it's a different, because again, you look at somebody like Hugh Jackman and you're like, yeah, this guy is not a Walter White, a season 1 Walter White, not in a million years, you know? But he does such a good job with his performance that by the time the movie ends and he goes to jail, you're like, oh, wait, that was there the whole time, you know? And you could just see kind of like, you can just see that kind of like stewing as it builds up throughout the entire movie. And to me, it's all handled in that one scene where he's interacting with the parent of the kid from the beginning, you know, where he's kind of just like, you know, we're basically slaves, us as teachers, you know, because in his mind, even though he's superintendent now, he never stopped being a teacher, you know, and he constantly saw himself as a slave to the system, and kind of his embezzlement was kind of a way of like getting back at that system, you know. It's kind of like, it's almost like a Lane Price move from season 5 of the Jared Harris character from season 5 of Mad Men. I don't think you're going to get that because you haven't watched Mad Men, but the whole thing is that this character, Lane Price, ended up embezzling money from the company because he was heavily in debt to the IRS, but also because he felt like he was owed it because of like the things that he had done for the company. And it's constantly like, to me, it asks those really good moralistic questions of like, does getting your due compensation like excuse you from doing something horrible, you know, and potentially screwing over millions of other people? And because this film, to me, asked those questions and was willing to go there, and to me did all the things that it should have in order to get there, that to me was what made this an excellent film.
Wow. It seems like we've watched a completely different film, my friend.
Yeah, to say the least.
So I guess I think this would be a fun way to sort of round the corner into the back half of this episode here. Why don't we do your favorite moment or intricacy or theme of the film, and I can do my least favorite, you know? Now. You give me why you loved it so much if there's one thing, and I'll give you why I hated it so much.
So here's the thing. So the one moment to me that obviously immediately stands out. Okay, like there are a lot of moments that I can pick up from. The first scene, like I love the first act of this movie. I love the first act of this movie. But to me, it's the turn comes from obviously the fact of when he's with Raphael Casal. Ironically enough, because this is pointing a whole bunch of fingers, because Raphael Casal wasn't one of the directorial debuts that I mentioned before, 2018's Blind Spotting, which starred Daveed Diggs from Hamilton. But when he meets with Raphael Casal, who plays the former student that's now working as a dancer and part-time bartender in Vegas, and then they end up having that relationship on the side, I was like, oh, wow, that was just not a direction that I was expecting to go in, because the first act is so geared you to think that, oh, this guy is just, a teacher who ended up running into a former student and just wants to know how he's doing. And then it ends up going in a completely different direction that you were not expecting. You're like, oh, wow, this is how it's going. So that was, memorable to me. But I honestly think that my favorite scene really is that scene with the parent in the room. Like I said, just any moment that Jackman is on screen, he is so naturally charming, this guy. And I'm so glad that he finally got another, because it's another situation kind of like Robert Downey Jr., where he's been playing Wolverine so long now that you almost forgot just how good of an actor he is on the side and what a different and kind of unique and diverse palette that he has. And he really is a legitimately great actor, if you watch something like The Prestige or something like Prisoners, where he just unleashes it all and really goes ham. You can realize, oh my God, this guy's great. And it was a great display of acting to me, from him. And I guess, again, it goes back to everything kind of why that one scene with the mom encapsulated everything that I loved about his performance, because it just said everything about his character in that one scene, which is where it's we give and we give and we give and we give and we give, and what do we get in return? Constant belittlement and bereavement, because it doesn't matter what we do, we are never enough. And that to me was just I'm like, wow, not only does that say everything about his character and everything that this movie is trying to say, but it ultimately makes that character as relatable as he is.
Yeah, so I guess for me, the moment I realized that, wow, this film feels like it's going nowhere, was when he first meets the journalist girl, and it just felt like they both didn't want to be there. I mean, he was, trying to give her this pep talk, this encouragement, but I could care less. That wouldn't have motivated me if I was a student. Oh yeah, you got to make the story. It's okay, dude, put your hat back, Wonka. This is super corny. Just relax right now. And her, I'm as much as I wanted more, because I want to be able to justify that she was good in that role. I mean, she just dragged for me, man. I just didn't care, and we probably could have used more of her backstory with her father, and sort of their dynamic and how he was coping and whatnot, because it seems like her family went through a lot, right? I think her mom was the one hitting on Hugh Jackman's character.
That actually wasn't her mom. That was a completely different character. That part.
Okay,
yeah.
I was unsure about that, because they had shown a family photo and I was like, is that her? But all these Long Island women, they all,
yeah.
I mean, the early 2000s.
Yeah, we don't need to go into the intricacies of Long Island housewife mentality.
Yeah. And so anyways, with that being said, I just could care less about her. But the one scene where I realized this was a film that I would consider bad, but I'll give it a second chance if I watch it again down the road, maybe that'll change my mind, was that scene at the very end where he gave and he gave and he gave, and he just gave me another reason to, scroll my mouse over the screen and see how many minutes were left, because it did not hit the dramatic peak that I know that they wanted me to feel there. I could really care less in that moment, and if anything, I was just I don't even feel bad for the people getting screamed at, because it just all feels just so not there. And hey man,
all right,
look, I enjoyed having something
we've got
new to
movies
watch.
that we've disagreed on before.
I enjoyed having something to watch in quarantine, and so
something new to watch.
Exactly,
we should also
exactly something new to watch, and so I can't be upset about that. It's just not everything is for everyone, and I'm glad you enjoyed it though, because we need something good in this time, and I'm glad
this is my number 3 favorite movie of the year.
I'm glad everyone who's watched this film and seems to love it has enjoyed it. And I'm sure with the lack of material we're going to be getting down the pipeline this year, as we said earlier in this conversation with the Judd Apatow show, I'm sure I'll be going back to this at some point. Probably going to even watch it with my folks. And
this is going to be something that we're going to be talking about and monitoring for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and so if I go back to it, we do those little warm-ups in the beginning of the podcast. If my mind changes, I'll let you guys know. I'll let you guys know how I feel about it after my second rewatch. I'm going to give this film a second chance because I recognize the talent, right? Like I said, the source material is compelling. but on the first pass, on the first glance, it really just didn't work for me, Dom. So do we want to jump into like star ratings and get out of here? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's do closing comments and star ratings. So I'll go first since I like this movie, so therefore I get to go first naturally.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, to me, this was an awesome sophomore effort. Again, it's just a matter of because these directors have such an impressive powerhouse directorial outing that a lot of people kind of have this chip on their shoulder almost. They're almost ready to jump and pounce and be like, oh, this wasn't as good as the first one that came out, you know? It not as much because I don't think a lot of people saw Annihilation, but I did see a few people say that with Annihilation. It happened with us, and I could very easily, and the thing that makes me happy about this movie, Bad Education, is that I have not seen that many criticisms going towards that yet. But again, I'm going to attribute that to Corona talk. It's just the fact that people are just happy to have something new, so they're not going to like levy a lot of criticism. But to me, this was everything that I wanted from this movie. This was kind of reminding me, oh, this is why I loved Thoroughbreds, and I wasn't crazy for loving this guy's directorial day outing as much as I did. This was a compelling story to begin with, some absolutely terrific performances. The narrative was tight-knit. It was gripping, even if it didn't feel like it was in the moment, like the way that the movie kind of subtly and slowly creeps up on you, it gave me a feeling. Again, it's kind of that reminder of like, oh wow, movies like this can still be great, and just movies in general can still be great, you know? If you're looking for kind of just like something to relax to on like a Saturday night, you know, almost, I actually weirdly enough would recommend this movie, because even if it does have a stinger at the end, it makes you think, you know? And also, I give this movie mad props for having one of the most insane cut to credits ever, because that Dido song, that gave me flashbacks to being like 5 or 6 years old, and that was one of the go-to songs that my mom would play in the car radio all the time when I was that age. So when I heard that song, I was like, oh wow, that's a flashback to my childhood right there. But yeah, I absolutely loved this movie. Again, if I have any complaints, the only thing is that I wish we could have gotten a longer edit to give us even more with these characters, because they were awesome. I give this movie 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Word. I respect your points, man. I see why you would say that, and I think for people who loved it as much as you, it's clearly worthy of that star ranking. I will say that the one good thing I got from this film was taking out my phone at the end of the movie, Shazamming, and looking up Dido and being like, damn, I forgot these songs, and damn, they're all bangers, and they're going in my master playlist. So I got something from this film, but not what I was looking for, and so that's something that is upsetting, especially because, as we said, like with the quarantine, I was begging for a new movie, anything to watch. I mean, sure, Netflix has been pumping out some pretty cool TV shows, and we'll be talking about those soon on our channel, but like, I wanted a movie, you know, because, you know, we got in the habit of going to see movies and checking out films and talking about films on this show.
It was good getting back to that.
And so I was looking forward to sort of getting back to that, and it just, the hype was better than the experience. I felt that really nothing worked in this film. I still am going to be racking my brain about like what facet of it exactly didn't quite click. But hey, you know what? I'm just going to say right now, the whole thing didn't click for me. And you know, like I said, if you love this film, that is totally fine. I respect and I see your opinion. But for me, it really did not work. And I'm going to have to give this 1.5 out of 5 stars. Which I think is my lowest rating yet.
Not even a 2. So this is another example of the breaking down of the homogeneity of movies, where because everything is so individualized and streamlined now, there is never going to be a movie again that forever unites us. I am making that statement.
Have
right
we
now,
ever agreed on a movie? I know we've done it on TV shows.
We
right?
have. We have. We've
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
We have agreed. Yeah, we agreed on that. Well, here's the thing. Are you talking about specifically for this podcast or just in general?
I'm talking about like on the podcast, I suppose. I know we haven't.
Okay, well, we agreed on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I thought we, for the most part, agreed on it Chapter 2.
I'm talking about like getting the same star rating, going for like the show's token high five of like, we did it.
Okay,
you know?
well, look, okay, if we're talking about that specific, I think the only things that just properties in general that we 100% agreed on were Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Watchmen. I'm pretty sure we're the only things that we like 100% agreed on.
Hey, we got a couple.
But that's not talking to quality. That's just talking to like, that just comes down to personal taste. You know, like I'm just talking like overall, like just like people's overall general thoughts. Because most people, I think I'm right in saying this, most people are not going to break stuff down as specifically as we do. You know, like we are, as many more people like us come out of the woodwork, we constantly have to remind ourselves that we are still the exception, not the rule. you know?
I couldn't agree more. And that's part of the fun of doing this show for me, is getting this deep and this analytical. And that's exactly why I say, like, if you got something out of this movie, if you love this film like Dom, I totally get it. You know, not everyone's going to be as nitpicky as looking for as much as we are. But we have an hour-long show to do each week. So, you know, it's a bit of a different game for us.
We are going to be back each and every single week, regardless of this quarantine. Guys, we have a podcast. It's called the Talkin TV podcast. If you aren't listening to it, you absolutely should. Our audio-only formats are on Anchor, which is a free distribution service that goes out to, rock it down for me, Chris, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Stitcher, not SoundCloud, because fuck SoundCloud. They make you pay for their longer versions.
Not for kids.
You're losing track of the figures. We are also have our social media platforms. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. And most recently, we just started up our YouTube channel, which this episode in video format will be up on Wednesday for Talkin TV or Talkin TV podcast, depending on where you want to listen to us. I also have a personal page as well. Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's in the name right there. I hate these goddamn camera angles because it makes it really difficult to point to our name.
It's hard.
But if
I'm
you
trying to figure it out.
But if you type those words into your browser anywhere, you will be able to find my content. That's the beauty of the internet now. Anybody can make content, and it's really easy to find. So go out and support other people's content. Some people really, really desperately need it. I would like to think that we have it because we depend on you guys. You guys are the reason why we are able to do what we do. Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, so, you know, the good people can find me at Christian Ivanko, as you can see it clearly put right there. I make music. I have a second podcast called Talkin with Andrew and Chris, spelled Talkin the same way we do on this show right here. This show is Talkin TV, if you haven't heard. Basically, we just interview an artist of the week each week, or me and Andrew just get on there and just sort of talk shop about what we've been into. And just, honestly, those episodes are kind of like doing this, Dom, where it's like I just want to talk to anyone and pretend like we're hanging out. So if you need that, if you need more of this and more of just banter that's a little less focused and a little more fun, come to that show, because it never gets too serious where we're dissecting and examining things. But, you know, with that being said, Dom, we also have some more content coming out that's not as deep and as intricate, but is still as fun on the YouTube channel, right? At least we're doing like more than just these podcast videos on YouTube, right? I'm correct in saying that, am I?
Do.
Try to make sure. So we're doing watch-alongs,
yes,
right?
Yes, indeed, you are correct in saying that. We have, yes.
So we're doing some watch-alongs.
Yes, we
are. We're doing, I think I'm going to be doing some solo stuff on there, right? I think I'm going to be putting out an episode or like a mini little review of Afterlife Season 2 at some point this week, right?
I'm waiting for it. I want to watch it. You've been telling me that you're going to be putting this stuff out. I'm still putting out older episodes, but
it might be up there.
Like
it definitely will be.
The space is there.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing like a lot more. I hope to get Dom going on that channel too with like his own unique little personal segment. But like we're expanding into YouTube, guys. And so if you haven't already, please subscribe. Please subscribe. Turn on that bell for notifications as well, because we throw up a lot and it's only going to get crazier. And if you're here from our collaboration with Movie Files last weekend, thank you. Welcome to our community. We really appreciate you guys. That was a blast doing that. A lot of you guys tuned in. A lot of you guys got exposed to what we do here on the show, and we hope you enjoyed it, you know. And YouTube is the best place to communicate with us, talk with us, come hang with us in a watch-along. And Dom, I mean, what's our schedule like for coming up, and what can these people expect?
Oh man, we got a lot of stuff coming up, people. As you know, Chris just finished his big Marvel watch, and that kind of reinvigorated us as to kind of break down the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we got that podcast coming up in a few weeks. We got our Westworld finale next weekend. Yeah. We got our Clone Wars finale 2 weekends after that. We got a few more watch logs planned, but I'm not going to spoil them because unlike Chris, I actually do still value the element of surprise. And yeah, Chris, can I do my thing? Can I do my line? Are we done now?
Well, let me think. We asked them to subscribe on YouTube and turn on the notification bell. We thanked them for being here because without them, we'd have nothing. And we told them we're expanding into YouTube. So, yeah, Dom, I guess, is there a message you have to leave the people with here today?
Watch more fucking movies, people. We're done.
Peace out, guys.